Ukraine's President Zelensky has blamed the fall of Avdiivka, a key town in the east of the country, on a lack of long-range weapons. Kyiv has pulled its forces out after a lengthy battle. Russian troops have been on the offensive around Avdiivka for months, and tonight President Putin has congratulated them for taking complete control of the town. President Zelensky said his soldiers had been outgunned 10-1 and made an urgent appeal for more weapons from the international community. Our correspondent Andrew Harding sent this report from the Donbass region.
Ukrainian troops film themselves as they withdraw from Avdiivka. Exhausted after the longest and perhaps the bloodiest battle of the war so far. Russian shells still landing close by. In the town centre, a Russian flag is raised. And another on a rooftop in one of the town's industrial areas. The Kremlin is already crowing, releasing footage of Russian fighter jets in action. Air power has played a big role in this victory. On the ground, Ukrainian forces have also been struggling with acute shortages of men and, in particular, of ammunition. So these are the last 2 shells that you have? Yes, this artillery officer told us a week ago, blaming Western nations for halting supplies. The result? Ukrainian infantry fighting to hold on to Avdiivka have been heavily outgunned by as much as 10-1. And so, eventually, Ukraine ordered a withdrawal. At times, well organised, but not always. Here, a Ukrainian armoured vehicle is hit by a drone. Overall, though, it's Russia that has suffered by far the heaviest losses here.
Russia has suffered 47,000 casualties in Avdiivka since last October. Those are huge losses. In such circumstances, we consider this a successful operation.
Outside Avdiivka, Ukrainian soldiers are already reinforcing new defensive lines and playing down the significance of today's retreat. On its own, the fall of this one small town won't change the course of the war. But again, Russia has shown its sheer determination, its massive firepower, and its willingness to sustain very heavy casualties. And none of that is good news for Ukraine. No wonder towns nearby are nervous.
Every day I think about the future, not only this town, about every town, Покровськ, Авдіївка, Костянтиновка, Дніпро, Kyiv.
That they may be next.
Yes.
For now, in Avdiivka, the Russians are once more lords of the rubble. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Eastern Ukraine.
Well, next weekend will mark the 2nd anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Let's take a closer look at what is happening on the front line in the east of the country. This is what the east looked like in October last year. The large section of pink shows the areas where Russia had full military control. The sections covered in stripes show some Russian control, and then the yellow patches denote more recent Russian advances. And if we look at the same map today, we can see how the front line has changed. The pink has engulfed the stripes, and those yellow sections have expanded significantly. In other words, Russian troops are advancing westwards. Let's return to Andrew Harding in eastern Ukraine. And so what does today's news from that region mean for the wider war, Andrew?
Good evening, Jane. So, if you look at the big picture, I think it's clear that both the Russians and the Ukrainians now realise that this is going to be a very long war. No possibility, really, of a quick breakthrough. You may remember that last year, Ukraine launched that big counter-offensive with a lot of Western weapons, Western tanks and so on. It failed. It took back almost no territory, largely because the Russians had dug in and put so many minefields in their path. Then you've had a bit of a stagnant period for the last month or two, and now the Russians are having essentially their turn at trying to break through Ukrainian lines. They're not making huge progress, but they are trying now, not just in Avdiivka, but other places north of here, to break through. The Ukrainians have made it clear that they are going to dig in and try and make sure the Russians suffer huge losses in the coming months. And then the Ukrainian hope is that they'll get more Western weapons, including long-range missiles and including perhaps fighter jets. And then they, at some point, perhaps later this year or even next year, will have another go at trying to reclaim all the territory that's still under Russian control.